Good afternoon, Facebook. It's Friday. It's time for Alternative Facts, where we look at the media narratives of this week and we tell you what's wrong with them. But before we begin, first I need you guys to check in. Comment, like, share your location with me on iMessage. Drop your pins. Send it to Kevin. Split Ubers with us. We need to know where you are at all times. And before we get into the media narratives, Kevin, a message from our sponsors.
Right after you check in,
Yes.
and I mean immediately after
Yes.
you check in, we want you to take notice of the donate button below your screen. If you appreciate the hard-hitting journalism brought to you every day by the Daily Caller News Foundation, we would sincerely appreciate any financial support you can provide. The DCNF provides exhaustive, comprehensive coverage of news and politics here in Washington. We cover the White House, we cover Congress, the Pentagon, the State Department, the U.S. Supreme Court. We bring you the news of the day, high-quality reportage without bias. We produce excellent fact-based journalism outside of the echo chamber of the mainstream media, and we sincerely appreciate any financial support you can provide to that important endeavor.
Please give some money to a foundation that is dedicated to the news.
It's a morally...
But let's launch in. Bill Clinton. What's going on, Kevin? Why are we even talking about Bill Clinton? It's been 20 years.
Well, this week, Bill Clinton became a sex predator.
Ooh,
for the very
interesting.
He
hasn't been for most of his life.
He has not been a sex predator heretofore, but now that he is no longer in politics, and
right.
now that the Clinton family is no longer important to the future of the Democratic Party, he appears to have become, in the minds of many leading liberals, a sex predator with whom we need to have a serious reckoning.
Right.
So a number of prominent people in media and in the Democratic Party, including Matt Iglesias of Vox,
Chris
Hayes of MSNBC, and New York Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, in the last week have made statements to the effect that they believe a number of women like Paula Jones or Juanita Broderick, who have accused Bill Clinton of various sexual predations. We've re-litigated the Lewinsky scandal of the late 90s that is well known, I'm sure, to all of our viewers. And a number of people in the Democratic Party have suddenly, for reasons that aren't quite clear to me, arrived at the conclusion that Bill Clinton, should not be. He should be expelled from the polite quarters of liberal politics.
What is so fascinating here is that the New York Times reached out to 10 different well-known Bill Clinton surrogates and could not get a single one of them to defend Bill on the record. And this is all part, obviously you guys are all very familiar with what's happening today with, the accusations against Roy Moore, the allegations, the photo of Al Franken groping a woman, and Harvey Weinstein, obviously, which was covered on this program, Kevin Spacey. There are so many allegations out there about so many different people that it's starting to make people realize they're saying, hey, we ran cover for this type of behavior 20 years ago, and all of a sudden, exactly as Kevin said, when Bill Clinton is no longer important to the future of the Democratic Party, when Hillary Clinton can no longer be scathed by the allegations against her husband, then it's finally a time for reckoning against this man.
And let's focus on the media instead of focusing just for a moment on Democratic politicians. There are plenty of people in media who actively abetted Bill Clinton's predations. In the late 90s, there was of course that infamous report from infamous quote from a White House reporter whose name now escapes me. But she said that we should all get down on our presidential knee pads to thank Bill Clinton for protecting access to abortion during his administration. Andrea Mitchell, just recently, not that long ago, made reference to Juanita Broderick's allegations against President Clinton. She referred to them as decades-old allegations that have been debunked and
totally
disproven.
Debunked. Jim Acosta as well had tweeted out in October 2016 that Juanita Broderick had supposedly signed an affidavit saying that these were not true. That is not in fact true whatsoever. The media ran extensive cover for the Clintons, and they have for decades. And specifically, it has taken away any sort of moral high ground now that we're dealing with real sexual predations of current politicians. And it's turned into a tribalistic fight over he should resign. Well, if he needs to resign, then he needs to resign. And everybody is holding their ground, and we're not having a true reckoning of politicians with sexual assault allegations.
I said this a couple of weeks ago, but I'll say it again. I give the American people a lot of credit for having an intuitive sense of all of the rot at the top of our institutions. We've seen a lot of anxiety about this in opinion polling and certainly in recent election results. The American people, by and large, have a very good sense of the moral degradation at the very tops of the most important institutions in this country, and I give them enormous credit for that. And also, I'll resurrect this theme again. It's important to think about the personal relationships that a lot of people in media have with certain people that have gone into politics, and Al Franken is sort of a case in point in that regard. Al Franken was a media figure before he became a politician. He was, of course, a Saturday Night Live writer and a member of the ensemble cast there for many years, a person who has personal relationships with a number of people at NBC and MSNBC, a person who is friends with many people in the entertainment industry, and a person whose moral shortcomings, even before these allegations, were quite frankly very well known. Jonathan Last had an excellent piece at the Weekly Standard yesterday that talked a lot about the oral histories of Saturday Night Live. That have been written, in which Franken is described as like a coke-addled writer. A guy who did not, carry himself with dignity and with, respect around his colleagues. A guy who, regularly didn't show up to work until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Just like not a person of serious moral fiber, and that is well known to people in media who know Al Franken, and so. In my opinion, yesterday's allegations were not particularly shocking. They were shocking if you don't know anything about
Your
Al
point
Franken.
there is great about not only the personal relationships, but about the intuition of a lot of the American people about the moral rot at the top of these institutions. Because for years and years and years, they've used their powerful perches in media and in Hollywood to tell you specifically that type of behavior is okay, that it's okay for Al Franken to live his truth, and that we are the ones who are morally objectionable for telling him the way to live his life. But it turns out that if he had listened to many of the people who told him to live a virtuous life, he probably wouldn't be facing these allegations today.
Absolutely true. But let's pivot away from Al Franken and talk about another subject. This, I think, is some of the fakest news I've ever seen. The news has never been faker. I kid. But Saga wrote an excellent piece with our colleague, Dr. Ryan Pickrell, about a narrative that emerged from Europe last weekend about a protest in Poland that allegedly called for a massive Islamic Holocaust. Sagar, give us the take.
Here's what happened. So there was a large far-right protest in Poland, a nationalist protest. Now, the media is desperate to paint them as the sort of Nazi demagogues that they want you to believe they are. Now, certainly, they held up signs which were very objectionable and terrible. White Europe. Talking about, chanting Nazi slogans, etc. But the fake news that came out, and that was the headline at every institution, was a claim that they had hung up a banner that said, "Pray for an Islamic Holocaust." Now, obviously, that is shocking and jarring. But it turns out that sign never appeared there. It once appeared at a Polish protest in 2015, and somehow a scant reference to that banner, misidentifying the city, became a headline at CNN, at the Washington Post, the Independent, the Guardian, and many of these outlets have not even...
The Wall Street Journal as well.
Yes, well, the Wall Street Journal is where the claim originated. And so what happened is this journal reporter put a "Pray for an Islamic Holocaust" claim that it had appeared over a bridge in Warsaw, which had not happened. Then a CNN reporter read that, put it in his story without attribution to the Wall Street Journal, which I love, so then he had to own it. And then the Washington Post ran a headline off of CNN's report.
So this story saturated Western media
everywhere.
In addition to the pieces in establishment media outlets, we saw it all over Twitter this weekend.
Yes.
How many of these organizations have issued corrections to their stories after this news was debunked?
Only 3 that we know so far, and there are so many references to this which were attributed to CNN and to the Wall Street Journal, such as in the Guardian, such as in the Independent. They ran videos on this, nightly newscasts. It was bandied about as the worst of these nationalist movements, and at the end of the day, it was completely and utterly false. And people in Poland are rightfully very upset about this, because a lot of people who simply believe in a restrictionist immigration policy or in not letting migrants into the country are being cast as people who want and pray for an Islamic Holocaust. And that's just absolutely 100% false. The Washington Post reporter who was responsible for the story even wrote a mea culpa piece talking about why I wrote fake news for the Washington Post. It does not get any faker than this.
Credit where due for owning that mistake.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
What's so frustrating about this, as we have said on this program before, is that there is no mechanism by which to hold media accountable for the fake news that they spread. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this program, is create a space to hold individual reporters and individual outlets responsible, for the misinformation that they spread, if only to our readers, and to alert them, to be attentive to the news that they're reading and to scrutinize the news that they're reading, because so much of the information may not necessarily be false, but is either coming from a biased perspective, or is coming by way of reporters who just are not subject matter experts.
It's pretty clear.
You got to think that maybe a subject matter expert on Eastern European politics would not have made that mistake.
It's pretty clear that exactly what happened is that everybody saw that phrase, they wanted it to be true because they knew it was the most outlandish and eye-popping and clicky thing that they could possibly get into their headlines, and there was no skepticism of it. It took days for them to offer corrections. Even then, only a few of them have offered it, and now we're moving on to something else. But those tweets still exist. You can go and look at how many prominent liberal leaders and thought leaders were quote tweeting it and saying, "Oh my God, the true face of the far right revealed," etc. It's just absolutely not true. But thank you guys so much for joining us. This is Alternative Facts, where we look at the prevailing media narratives and tell you what's wrong with them. Make sure you hit that donate button. Make sure you hit that check-in button, and we'll see you next week.